Moving to a new neighborhood is never easy, especially when you're 14, starting over and trying to find your place. For Michael Reynolds, a thoughtful and determined teenager, Pinewood Lane was supposed to be a fresh start, a place to play basketball, make friends, and enjoy the summer. But an unexpected confrontation at the community pool changes everything, leaving him feeling like an outsider in his own neighborhood. What begins as a simple misunderstanding quickly grows into something more, a test of Michael's resilience, character, and ability to rise above assumptions and judgment. As he navigates the challenges of fitting in, he finds himself drawn to the basketball court, a place where hard work and teamwork speak louder than words. Along the way, Michael encounters unexpected allies, moments of kindness that shift his perspective, and mentors who push him to discover his own strength. But the path isn't easy. Tensions on the court, doubts in his mind, and the lingering shadow of that first conflict force Michael to dig deeper than ever before. Can he overcome the challenges, prove he belongs, and rise as a leader in his own right? The moving truck rumbled away, leaving behind a trail of dust as Michael Reynolds stood on the front steps of his new home. The small two-story house on Pinewood Lane looked just like the others on the block, neatly painted, with carefully trimmed lawns. But to Michael, it felt unfamiliar. Everything about this neighborhood seemed foreign. The streets were quiet, except for the occasional bark of a dog or the distant laughter of kids playing somewhere nearby. Michael glanced back at his mother, Carolyn Reynolds, who was carrying a box from the car. She gave him a tired smile. "Are you just going to stand there, or are you going to help me unpack?" Carolyn teased gently. Her voice, calm and steady, always had a way of grounding Michael, even when everything else felt uncertain. "I am helping," Michael replied with a small grin. "I'm supervising." Carolyn rolled her eyes playfully, and Michael grabbed a box, following her inside. The house smelled like fresh paint and lemon cleaner. Sunlight poured through the living room windows, illuminating the empty space that would soon hold their furniture. Carolyn had done her best to make this move feel like an opportunity, but Michael could tell she was exhausted. "Home sweet home," Carolyn murmured, as she set the box down. Michael nodded but said nothing. Moving had been hard enough when they left their old house, a small place full of memories. But starting over in a completely new neighborhood, where no one knew his name, felt overwhelming. Carolyn worked for the state government and had recently accepted a promotion. It was a big opportunity for her, but it meant uprooting their lives. Michael understood why they had to move, but the ache of leaving behind friends, his old school, and the basketball team still lingered. "I'll finish up here. Why don't you go explore a bit?" Carolyn suggested, wiping her forehead with the back of her hand. "Get to know the area. You might even make a friend." Michael grabbed his sneakers and sighed. "I'll try," he said, though his voice lacked enthusiasm. The afternoon sun beat down as Michael wandered through the neighborhood. The streets were quiet, lined with tall trees that swayed gently in the breeze. Every house looked the same, clean, perfect, almost too perfect. He shoved his hands in his pockets, feeling out of place. After walking a few blocks, Michael spotted a tall black fence surrounding what looked like a community pool. The sound of splashing water and kids laughing drifted through the air. He stopped at the gate, peering inside. The pool was bustling with life kids cannonballing into the water, parents lounging in chairs, and lifeguards lazily watching over everyone. For the first time all day, Michael smiled. He loved swimming. Back in his old neighborhood, the pool had been his favorite place during the summer. It was where he spent hours racing friends and perfecting his dives. Michael pushed open the gate and walked toward the pool deck. He carried nothing but the towel slung over his shoulder, his old sneakers squeaking slightly as he moved across the pavement. He paused for a moment, watching the activity. Everything seemed so normal here, so simple. He wished he could feel like he belonged. "Excuse me!" The voice came out of nowhere, sharp and commanding. Michael turned, startled, and saw an older woman walking briskly toward him. She looked to be in her 50s, with short graying hair and a pinched expression. Her name, he would later learn, was Janet Mitchell. "Who are you?" she asked, stopping in front of him. Her eyes narrowed, studying him with suspicion. Michael blinked, confused by the sudden interrogation. "I'm Michael. I just moved here with my mom," he said, keeping his voice polite. Janet's frown deepened. "Moved here? Where do you live?" "On Pinewood Lane," Michael replied, shifting uncomfortably. "I just wanted to check out the pool." "This pool is for residents only," Janet said, crossing her arms. "Do you have an ID? A pool passes?" Michael shook his head. "No, I—" "Then you can't be here," she interrupted, her tone growing sharper. "This is private property." Michael felt a flush rise to his cheeks. He looked around, hoping someone would step in, but no one did. Parents and kids continued with their day, seemingly unaware of what was happening. The lifeguards glanced over, but quickly looked away, pretending not to notice. "I'm not causing any trouble," Michael said carefully, trying to keep his voice steady. "I live here now. I just didn't know I needed a pass." Janet raised an eyebrow, her expression unrelenting. "That's what they all say." Michael's chest tightened. He felt the weight of her words, the unspoken message behind them. He wanted to defend himself, to demand why she was treating him like this, but he knew better. His mother's words echoed in his mind. "Stay calm. Always stay calm." Michael opened his mouth to say something, but before he could, Janet pulled out her phone. "If you don't leave, I'll have to call security," she said, her tone cold. For a moment, Michael froze. He looked around again, searching the crowd for a friendly face, someone who might step in and tell her she was wrong. But the silence from the bystanders felt heavy, suffocating. "Fine," Michael muttered finally. He turned away, his face burning with humiliation. He pushed through the gate, feeling as though every eye at the pool was on him. The laughter and splashing that had seemed so welcoming minutes ago now felt like mockery. Michael walked back down the sidewalk, his head low and his sneakers dragging against the pavement. When Michael returned home, Carolyn was unpacking a box in the kitchen. She looked up, smiling, but her expression quickly shifted when she saw his face. "What happened?" she asked softly, setting down a dish. Michael hesitated, trying to hold back the knot of emotions rising in his chest. "I went to the pool," he said quietly. "Some lady said I didn't belong there. She said she'd call security." Carolyn's face stilled, her calm expression giving nothing away. She wiped her hands on a towel and walked over to him, placing a gentle hand on his shoulder. "Did you say anything to her?" "I told her I lived here," Michael said, looking down. "But she didn't believe me." Carolyn sighed and pulled him into a hug. "I'm sorry you had to go through that," she murmured. "People can sometimes act out of ignorance or fear. That does not mean you let them define who you are." "I just wanted to check out the pool," Michael said, his voice muffled against her shoulder. "I wasn't doing anything wrong." Carolyn leaned back, looking him in the eye. "You did nothing wrong, Michael. You stood your ground and stayed calm. That takes strength." Michael nodded, though the sting of the encounter remained. "Why do people do that?" "Because change makes some people uncomfortable," Carolyn said simply. "But kindness is stronger than ignorance, and I promise you, this will get better." Michael wanted to believe her, but it was hard. "Tomorrow," Carolyn continued, her voice steady, "we'll go to the neighborhood office and get you a pool pass. You belong here just as much as anyone else." Michael managed a small smile. His mother's unwavering confidence was contagious, even in moments like this. "Okay," he said. As evening fell, Michael sat on his bed, staring out the window at the quiet street. Somewhere nearby, he heard the faint sound of kids laughing again. It felt distant, like a world he could not quite reach. But as he sat there, he remembered his mother's words. Kindness is stronger. Michael lay back on his pillow, staring at the ceiling. He would go back to that pool, he decided. He would show up, no matter how uncomfortable it felt. If there was one thing his mother had taught him, it was that you could not let others push you away from where you belonged. Tomorrow would be a new day. The next morning, sunlight spilled through the curtains in Michael's room. He woke up to the sound of birds chirping outside, a calm rhythm that made Pinewood Lane feel more like a postcard than his reality. But the memory of yesterday's encounter at the pool still lingered, sharp around the edges. Michael sat up and rubbed his eyes. His mother, Carolyn, had already started moving around downstairs. He could smell coffee brewing and hear the quiet hum of music playing in the kitchen. Kindness is stronger, he repeated to himself, though he wasn't sure he fully believed it yet. As Michael made his way downstairs, he found Carolyn seated at the kitchen table with a cup of coffee and her laptop open. Her calm focus was something he had always admired about her. Even when life threw challenges her way, she never let them break her stride. "Good morning, sleepyhead," Carolyn said, looking up with a small smile. "Morning," Michael mumbled, grabbing a banana from the counter. "I was thinking," Carolyn began, closing her laptop, "we'll stop by the neighborhood office today and get that pool pass sorted out. After that, why don't you head back to the pool? It's a beautiful day." Michael hesitated. "I don't know, Mom. What if that lady's there again?" Carolyn's expression softened as she stood up and placed a reassuring hand on his shoulder. "If she is, you'll handle it just like you did yesterday, with patience and calm. Remember, you have every right to be there." Michael nodded slowly. "I guess." "Don't let one person's behavior stop you from enjoying your summer," Carolyn said firmly. "The best way to prove you belong is to show up." By mid-morning, they had walked to the neighborhood office, a small building just a few streets over. A friendly receptionist greeted them and quickly issued Michael a pool pass. Carolyn thanked her warmly and handed the shiny blue card to Michael. "There you go," Carolyn said with a smile as they stepped outside. "No one can question you now." Michael turned the card over in his hand. It seemed like such a small thing, but it felt like armor proof that he belonged here, no matter what anyone said. "I'll head to the pool now," Michael said finally, trying to sound more confident than he felt. "Good." Carolyn patted his back gently. "Remember, Michael, you belong wherever you choose to be." The pool was busier than it had been the day before. Kids splashed in the shallow end, lifeguards perched on tall chairs with their whistles hanging loosely around their necks, and parents lounged beneath colorful umbrellas. Michael walked in slowly, clutching the pool pass in his pocket like a lifeline. The rhythmic splashes and laughter surrounded him, and for a moment he let himself imagine this was just like his old neighborhood pool, a place where he could feel free. But then he saw her, Janet Mitchell. She was seated in a lounge chair near the entrance, sunglasses perched on her nose, and a paperback book in her hand. For a split second, Michael considered turning around, but his mother's words echoed in his mind. "The best way to prove you belong is to show up." He took a breath and walked further onto the deck, keeping his gaze forward. Just as he reached the edge of the pool, a voice called out behind him. "Hey, kid!" Michael turned around, his shoulders tensing instinctively, but it wasn't Janet. A tall man wearing a navy blue security shirt approached him. The man's name tag read Marcus Reed, and he looked to be in his late 20s. His posture was relaxed, his steps unhurried. Unlike Janet, his expression was calm, almost kind. Michael's heart pounded as Marcus stopped a few feet away. "You got a pool pass, buddy?" Michael pulled the card from his pocket, trying not to let his hands shake as he held it up. "Yeah, I just got it this morning." Marcus took the card and glanced at it before handing it back with a nod. "Looks good. Welcome to the pool, Michael." Michael blinked in surprise. "You know my name?" Marcus grinned faintly. "Your mom's Carolyn Reynolds, right?" She's hard to miss around here, very impressive woman. Michael nodded slowly, unsure how to respond. Marcus's tone was casual, but there was something reassuring about it, like he wasn't trying to catch Michael doing something wrong. Marcus studied him for a moment, his expression softening. Look, I'm sorry about yesterday. I heard about what happened with Mrs. Mitchell. Michael stared at the ground, feeling his face flush. It's okay. No, it isn't, Marcus said quietly, his voice serious now. That should not have happened, and I'm sorry no one stepped in sooner. Michael looked up, surprised by the sincerity in Marcus's words. People didn't usually apologize for things like that. Not everyone is like her, Marcus continued. This pool is for everyone who lives here, and that includes you. Don't let anyone make you feel like you don't belong. Michael felt a knot in his chest loosen slightly. Thanks, he said, his voice quieter than he meant. Marcus smiled again, this time a little wider. Enjoy the pool, okay? I'll be around if you need anything. Michael watched as Marcus walked back toward the gate, his calm presence lingering even after he disappeared from view. For the first time, someone other than his mother had shown him that he wasn't alone. Michael sat at the edge of the pool with his feet dangling in the water, watching kids chase each other through the shallow end. The cool water splashed against his legs, soothing and familiar. He thought about Marcus's words. This pool is for everyone, and that includes you. It wasn't much, just a brief exchange, but it mattered. It was the kind of unexpected kindness Michael hadn't been sure he would find here. As he sat there, a voice interrupted his thoughts. Hey, you want to play? Michael looked up to see a girl about his age standing a few feet away. She had blonde hair tied back in a ponytail and wore a bright blue swimsuit. She smiled at him, her expression open and friendly. Michael hesitated. Play what? Marco Polo, the girl said, pointing to a group of kids in the deep end. We need one more player. For a moment, Michael considered saying no. He didn't know her, and the thought of jumping into a game with strangers made his stomach twist. But then he thought of Marcus and the way he'd said, "Don't let anyone make you feel like you don't belong." Sure, Michael said, standing up and brushing water off his legs. I'm Jenny, by the way, the girl said as they walked toward the group. You're new here, right? Yeah, Michael replied, feeling the nervousness ebb away. I'm Michael. Cool, Jenny said with a grin. You're on my team. Michael followed her into the water, and for the first time in days, he felt the tightness in his chest start to ease. As the game began, he swam through the pool, ducking and dodging as kids shouted, splashed, and laughed. He wasn't invisible anymore. He was just another kid playing Marco Polo on a summer afternoon. By the time the game ended, Michael's lungs ached from laughing, and his face hurt from smiling. Jenny high-fived him as they climbed out of the water. You're pretty fast, she said. You should come play basketball sometime. A bunch of us meet up at the park near here. Michael smiled, feeling something unfamiliar but welcome hope. Maybe I will, he said. Jenny grinned. See you around, Michael? As she walked away, Michael sat back down at the pool's edge. The day felt different now, lighter. Maybe this neighborhood wasn't so bad after all. He pulled the pool pass from his pocket, turning it over in his hand. It wasn't just a piece of plastic anymore. It was a reminder. He did belong here. Michael woke up the next morning with sore arms and legs, a lingering ache from hours of swimming and playing Marco Polo at the pool. It was the kind of tiredness that came from having fun, a feeling he hadn't experienced since moving here. He sat up, rubbing the back of his neck, as the events of yesterday came back to him. Meeting Jenny Parker had been unexpected, but her friendliness had broken through his nervousness. She hadn't asked where he came from or questioned why he was there. She just saw him for who he was, another kid who wanted to have fun. As he dressed, Michael thought about what Jenny had said. You should come play basketball sometime. The words stuck with him. He had loved basketball at his old school, playing pickup games with his friends on weekends and joining the team during the season. Being on the court had always made him feel confident, like he could leave his worries behind. He hesitated as he laced up his sneakers. Playing basketball meant putting himself out there again, and the idea made his stomach twist. What if the other kids didn't accept him? What if they were like Janet Mitchell, suspicious and cold? Michael took a deep breath, repeating his mother's words to himself. You belong wherever you choose to be. By late morning, the summer heat settled over Pinewood Lane, and the sound of distant lawnmowers buzzed through the air. Michael made his way to the park Jenny had mentioned. It was just a few blocks away, tucked between rows of houses. The basketball court was easy to spot, a wide asphalt slab with 2 hoops at either end, faded lines marking the key and 3-point arc. A group of kids had already gathered, passing the ball back and forth as they warmed up. Jenny stood near the sideline, tying her sneakers, and looked up just as Michael approached. "Hey, you made it!" she called, waving him over. Michael smiled faintly. "Yeah, I thought I'd check it out." Jenny grinned. "Perfect timing. We're short a player." She tilted her head toward the group of kids. "Come on, I'll introduce you." Michael followed her to the center of the court, where the other kids paused and turned to look at him. He recognized a few faces from the pool kids who had been playing Marco Polo the day before. "This is Michael," Jenny announced confidently. "He's new here, but he's pretty fast in the water, so I bet he's good on the court too." A tall boy with dark hair and a confident stance stepped forward, spinning the basketball on his finger. His name, Michael would later learn, was Ryan. "You play?" Ryan asked, his tone neutral but curious. Michael nodded. "Yeah, a little." Ryan smirked, passing him the ball. "Show us then. Let's see what you've got." Michael caught the ball and dribbled it a few times. The familiar weight felt good in his hands, like an old friend he hadn't seen in a while. Ryan pointed to the hoop. "Take a shot." Michael moved toward the free throw line. Kids stood around watching, and for a moment, he felt every pair of eyes on him. He bounced the ball once, twice, then lined up his shot. The ball sailed through the air in a smooth arc and swished cleanly through the net. A couple of kids whistled in appreciation, and Jenny grinned. "Told you he was good." Ryan nodded, clearly impressed. "All right, you're in. Let's play some 3-on-3. The game started fast. Michael found himself on Jenny's team, along with a younger boy named Danny. Ryan led the other team, flanked by 2 taller kids who moved with practiced confidence. At first, Michael struggled to find his rhythm. The court felt bigger than he remembered, and the unfamiliar faces made him second-guess his every move. He passed the ball too quickly, hesitated on shots, and got out of position on defense. "Come on, Michael," Jenny called, encouraging him after a missed pass. "You've got this." Ryan's team took advantage of the mistakes, scoring basket after basket. Michael's frustration built as sweat dripped down his forehead. He could feel the other kids watching him, waiting to see if he belonged here or not. Halfway through the game, Ryan stole the ball and drove to the hoop, scoring another easy layup. "Too easy," he called, his voice echoing across the court. Michael clenched his fists, swallowing back the frustration. He knew he was better than this. Back home, he had been one of the strongest players on his team. But here, surrounded by kids he didn't know, the confidence he once had seemed far away. Jenny jogged over and clapped him lightly on the shoulder. "Relax," she said quietly. "You're trying too hard to be perfect. Just play like you used to." Michael nodded, taking a deep breath. She was right. He was overthinking every move, trying to prove himself instead of just enjoying the game. The next time Michael got the ball, something shifted. He dribbled past one defender, cutting toward the basket with quick, smooth steps. Ryan moved to block him, but Michael spun away and hit a short jumper that bounced off the backboard and in. "Nice!" Jenny shouted, raising her hand for a high five. Michael smiled, feeling the tension in his shoulders start to ease. As the game continued, he settled into his rhythm. He blocked a shot on defense, stole the ball once, and made 2 more baskets. By the time they finished, both teams were red-faced and sweating, but laughing as they collapsed onto the sidelines. "Not bad, new guy," Ryan said, nodding at Michael as he caught his breath. "You play like that all the time, and you'll fit in here fine." Michael grinned, his confidence returning. "Thanks," Jenny nudged him playfully. "See? I told you this would be fun." Michael glanced around the court, feeling something he hadn't felt in a long time: belonging. The tension that had hung over him since moving here started to fade, replaced by the joy of doing something he loved. As the sun began to set, the group dispersed, some heading home while others lingered to chat. Jenny walked alongside Michael as they left the park. "You're really good," she said. "I bet you could play for the league team if you wanted. Coach Adams is always looking for new players." "Coach Adams?" Michael asked. Jenny nodded. "Yeah, he runs the community basketball league. Practices start soon. You should try out." Michael hesitated. "I don't know. I just got here." "So? You're great, and it's a good way to meet people." Jenny shrugged, her tone casual but encouraging. "Think about it." They reached the corner where their paths split, and Jenny waved as she headed in the opposite direction. "See you at the pool tomorrow?" "Yeah," Michael said, smiling faintly. "See you tomorrow." When Michael walked through the front door, Carolyn was sitting at the dining table with papers spread out in front of her. She looked up as he came in, a smile spreading across her face. "Hey, how was the park?" she asked. Michael dropped his sneakers by the door and sat down across from her. "It was good. I played basketball with some kids." Carolyn's smile widened. "Really? That's great, Michael." Michael nodded. "There's this league. Jenny said I should try out." Carolyn tilted her head, studying him. "Do you want to?" Michael thought about it for a moment. The fear of rejection still lingered, but something inside him felt different now, lighter. Playing basketball today reminded him of who he was before the move, before everything changed. "Maybe," he said finally. "I'll think about it." Carolyn reached across the table, squeezing his hand gently. "Whatever you decide, I'm proud of you. You're putting yourself out there, and that's what matters." Michael smiled, the knot in his chest easing further. Later that night, as he lay in bed, Michael replayed the events of the day in his mind. Jenny's encouragement, Ryan's grudging respect, and the familiar feeling of sinking a shot all stayed with him. He felt tired, but it was the good kind of tired again, the kind that came from finding his place, even if just for a little while. Maybe he really did belong here. The next day, the summer sun blazed high in the sky, casting warm golden light over Pinewood Lane. Michael sat on the edge of his bed, staring at his sneakers. The conversation from the basketball court played over in his head, Jenny's encouragement, Ryan's words, and the idea of joining the community league. "Do you want to?" Carolyn had asked. Michael did not have an answer. Basketball had always been his favorite thing back home. It was the one place where he felt confident, where he didn't have to think about anything but the game. But things felt different now. Everything was new. Everyone was watching. The thought of walking into a room full of strangers for tryouts made his stomach churn. Still, something inside him whispered that this was his chance. "Mom, can you drive me to the park later?" Michael asked over breakfast. Carolyn looked up, her eyebrows raised. "For basketball?" Michael nodded, avoiding her gaze as he took a bite of toast. Her smile was immediate. "Of course. When is it?" 4:00, he muttered. Carolyn reached over and squeezed his hand. "I'm proud of you, Michael." Michael shrugged. "I haven't done anything yet." "You're showing up. That's enough." By 3:45, Michael and Carolyn pulled up to the park. The parking lot was already half full, and Michael could see kids gathering near the court. Some of them dribbled basketballs, while others stood in small groups, laughing and chatting like they had known each other forever. Michael wiped his palms on his shorts as he opened the car door. Carolyn looked at him, her expression gentle but firm. "Remember, Michael," she said softly, "this is your chance to enjoy something you love. It doesn't matter what anyone else thinks." Michael nodded, trying to hold on to her words. "Okay. I'll be here when you're done." With a deep breath, Michael stepped out of the car and walked toward the court. The park's recreation center sat next to the basketball courts, a small brick building with wide windows and faded paint. Inside, the air was cool, a welcome relief from the heat. The sound of sneakers squeaking and basketballs thudding against the polished floor echoed through the space. Michael paused near the door, scanning the gym. Kids of all ages filled the court, some shooting hoops, others stretching or chatting. At the far end, a tall, broad-shouldered man with graying hair and a whistle around his neck stood with a clipboard. He watched the players closely, his eyes sharp but kind. "Coach Adams," Michael murmured to himself, recognizing the man from Jenny's description. "Hey, new guy." Michael turned to see Jenny waving him over. She stood with Ryan and a couple of other kids, holding a basketball under her arm. "You're here," she said, grinning. "Told you it'd be worth it." Michael smiled faintly. "Yeah, we'll see." "Don't worry," Ryan chimed in, tossing a ball to himself. "Tryouts aren't that bad. Just show the coach what you can do." Michael nodded, though his nerves remained. "All right, everyone, listen up." Coach Adams' deep voice boomed across the gym, immediately commanding everyone's attention. The players gathered around him as he looked out over the group, clipboard in hand. Up close, Michael could see the creases around his eyes and the way he carried himself, strong, confident, but approachable. "Welcome to tryouts for the Community Basketball League," Coach Adams said, his voice steady. "I'm glad to see so many of you here. Whether you've been playing for years or you're just starting out, everyone gets a fair shot." Michael shifted on his feet, his stomach still tight. "Here's how this works," Coach continued. "We'll start with warm-ups, move to some drills, and finish with scrimmages. I want to see hustle, teamwork, and a good attitude. Got it?" "Yes, Coach," the kids shouted in unison. Michael nodded along with them, the weight of the moment pressing on him. Warm-ups started simple jogging laps, stretches, and basic dribbling drills. Michael fell into the rhythm, the repetition soothing his nerves. The sound of basketballs bouncing in unison and the squeak of sneakers filled the gym like a familiar song. But as the drills progressed, the pressure returned. Coach Adams split the group into smaller teams for shooting practice. When it was Michael's turn to take his shots, his palms felt slick against the ball. He missed the first one, an easy layup. "Shake it off," Coach Adams called, his voice encouraging but firm. Michael nodded, trying to ignore the murmurs from some of the other kids. He lined up his next shot and exhaled. The ball rolled off his fingers cleanly, hitting the backboard and swishing through the net. "Nice," Jenny said quietly from the next group over. Michael's confidence flickered back to life. He made his next 2 shots, the rhythm coming back to him like an old habit. The final part of tryouts was a scrimmage half-court games where the kids could show their skills in real time. Michael found himself on Ryan's team again, alongside a few other players he didn't know. From the moment the game started, it was clear that some kids were already favorites. Ryan played like a leader, calling out plays and driving hard to the basket. Michael struggled to find his place, nervous about overstepping or messing up. But then, halfway through the scrimmage, the ball bounced toward him. Michael caught it instinctively, his heart racing. He looked around, searching for someone to pass to, but Ryan was covered. "Take it!" Ryan shouted, his voice sharp. Michael gripped the ball tighter, dribbling toward the basket. A defender moved to block him, but Michael shifted his weight, spinning away smoothly and pulling up for a short jumper. The ball arched cleanly and swished through the hoop. "Nice move, kid," Coach Adams called from the sideline. A flicker of pride lit up in Michael's chest. As the scrimmage continued, Michael grew more comfortable. He moved with confidence, blocking a shot on defense and sinking another basket after a quick pass from Ryan. By the time the whistle blew, he was breathless but smiling, sweat dripping down his face. "Good work out there," Ryan said, clapping him on the back. "You've got game, new guy." Michael grinned, the praise lifting his spirits. "Thanks." As the tryouts wrapped up, Coach Adams gathered everyone back at center court. He looked over the group, his expression serious but kind. "You all did great today," he said. "I saw hustle, teamwork, and heart out there. That's what matters most to me. If you don't make the team this time, don't let it stop you. Keep working hard." Michael's chest tightened. He had done his best, but doubt still lingered. What if it wasn't enough? "Team rosters will be posted at the rec center tomorrow morning," Coach finished. "Thanks for coming out." As the kids began to disperse, Coach Adams stopped Michael as he walked toward the door. "Hey, Michael," he said, his voice calm. Michael turned, surprised that Coach knew his name. "You've got a good shot and quick feet," Coach Adams said, nodding. "You keep working on your confidence, and you're going to be a strong player. Keep showing up, all right?" Michael felt a smile tug at the corners of his mouth. "Yes, Coach. Thanks. See you soon." When Michael stepped outside, the evening air felt cool against his skin. Carolyn was waiting by the car, leaning against the door with a curious smile. "How was it?" she asked. Michael hesitated, then grinned. "It was good. I think I did okay." Carolyn's smile widened. "I'm proud of you, Michael. You gave it your all." Michael climbed into the car, his shoulders lighter than they had been in weeks. He had shown up. He had played. And for the first time since moving here, he felt like maybe he belonged. As they drove home, Michael stared out the window, watching the trees blur past. Tomorrow, he would find out if he made the team. But for now, he let himself feel proud. It was a second chance, and he had taken it. The morning sun filtered through Michael's window, waking him earlier than usual. He lay there for a moment, staring at the ceiling as his nerves slowly crept in. Today was the day the team rosters would be posted at the rec center. Michael swung his legs over the edge of the bed, his heart already pounding. What if I didn't make it? The question buzzed in his mind, heavy and persistent. He had worked hard during tryouts, but there were so many other talented players. Doubt lingered, its familiar weight pressing on his chest. Downstairs, the smell of pancakes drifted up to meet him, and Michael felt his stomach growl despite the nerves. He threw on a t-shirt and shorts before heading down to the kitchen, where his mother, Carolyn, stood at the stove flipping pancakes. "Good morning," she said brightly, glancing over her shoulder. "Excited?" Michael hesitated, more like nervous. Carolyn turned off the stove, plating a fresh stack of pancakes before sitting across from him at the table. "That's completely normal. It means you care about it. And no matter what happens, Michael, you should be proud of yourself for trying." Michael picked at his fork. "What if I don't make it?" "Then you'll try again next time," Carolyn said firmly. "That's how life works. It's not about avoiding failure. It's about what you do next." Her words sat with him as he ate, though his appetite had already shrunk to nothing. After breakfast, Carolyn grabbed her car keys, giving him an encouraging smile. "Let's go see that roster." The drive to the rec center was quiet except for the hum of the engine and the occasional song playing on the radio. Michael stared out the window, watching the neighborhood roll past. Kids rode bikes on the sidewalks, and a couple of parents walked their dogs. Everything looked so ordinary, yet today felt like the most important day of his life. When they pulled into the rec center parking lot, Michael's stomach tightened. He spotted a few kids he recognized from tryouts standing near the building's entrance, chatting and laughing. Some held basketballs, dribbling them lazily on the sidewalk. Carolyn parked the car and gave him a reassuring look. "You've got this, Michael." Michael nodded, swallowing hard. "I'll go check." The rec center lobby was cool and smelled faintly of sweat and disinfectant. A bulletin board near the entrance displayed flyers for swim lessons, yoga classes, and summer activities. But Michael's eyes went straight to the sheet of paper pinned in the center, the team roster. A small group of kids clustered around it, scanning the list and murmuring to each other. Michael stood back, hesitating. He wasn't sure he wanted to see the answer. But then he thought of his mother's words. It's about what you do next. Taking a deep breath, Michael stepped forward, weaving his way through the crowd until he could see the paper. His eyes darted over the list of names. Community Basketball League team roster, Ryan Thompson, Danny Park, Jenny Parker. Michael's eyes moved further down the page, his heart hammering in his chest. Michael Reynolds. He froze, blinking to make sure he had read it correctly. There it was, his name, written clearly in black ink. He made the team. A smile broke across his face before he could stop it. He had done it. He belonged here. "Hey, new guy!" Michael turned to see Ryan standing nearby, a grin on his face. "Looks like we're teammates." Jenny appeared beside him, her blonde ponytail bouncing as she nodded enthusiastically. "I knew you'd make it!" Michael laughed, the tension that had been building inside him finally releasing. "Thanks, guys." Ryan nudged him with his elbow. "Practice starts tomorrow afternoon. Coach Adams runs a tight ship, so don't be late." "I won't," Michael said quickly. Jenny gave him a thumbs up. "See you there." Back in the car, Carolyn looked at Michael as he climbed into the passenger seat. "Well?" Michael grinned, holding up both hands in triumph. "I made the team!" Carolyn beamed, reaching over to ruffle his hair. "I knew you would. I'm so proud of you, Michael." Michael leaned back in his seat, letting the moment wash over him. He thought about all the doubts he'd had since moving here, the pool incident, the tryouts, the feeling of not fitting in. But right now, none of that mattered. For the first time, this new place didn't feel so unfamiliar. The following afternoon, Michael arrived at the rec center for the first team practice. The gym was already buzzing with energy when he walked in. Kids jogged laps around the court, and Coach Adams stood at center court, his whistle hanging around his neck as he talked to a few players. Michael spotted Jenny and Ryan stretching near the sideline and joined them. "Ready to work?" Ryan asked, cracking his knuckles. "Yeah," Michael replied, though a twinge of nerves still sat in his stomach. "Welcome to the team, Reynolds," Ryan said with a grin. Jenny nudged Michael's arm. "You'll be fine. Coach is tough, but he's fair." Before Michael could respond, Coach Adams's voice boomed across the gym. "All right, bring it in." The players gathered around, forming a loose circle around Coach. He looked out over them, his clipboard tucked under his arm. "Congratulations to everyone who made the team," Coach began, his voice steady and firm. "This season isn't just about winning games. It's about learning discipline, teamwork, and respect on and off the court." Michael nodded to himself, taking in every word. "Practice is where it all starts," Coach continued. "We work hard here so we can play hard out there. That means no shortcuts and no excuses. I expect every one of you to show up, give your best effort, and support your teammates." The players murmured agreement, nodding along. "Now, let's get to work," Coach said, blowing his whistle. "Laps first." Practice was intense, far more challenging than Michael had expected. The team started with sprints, suicides, and push-ups that left Michael's arms shaking. Coach Adams's voice cut through the gym like a drumbeat, encouraging, demanding, relentless. "Move those feet, Reynolds," Coach called as Michael pushed through the last set of sprints. Michael felt like his legs might give out, but he gritted his teeth and kept going. He didn't want to be the one who fell behind. When the conditioning ended, they moved to drills, passing, layups, and shooting practice. Michael felt his rhythm coming back with each shot he made, the familiar swish of the net filling him with confidence. By the end of practice, Michael was drenched in sweat, his muscles aching, but he felt good. Ryan gave him a nod as they grabbed water bottles from the sideline. "You kept up, new guy. Not bad." Michael smiled faintly. "Thanks." Keep working like that, and you'll be solid this season." Michael looked around the gym as the team wrapped up. For the first time since the move, he felt like he was part of something again. That evening, as Michael sat on the couch at home with Carolyn, she asked about practice. "It was tough," Michael admitted, "but I liked it. Coach Adams doesn't mess around." Carolyn smiled. "That's how you get better. I'm glad you're finding your place, Michael." Michael nodded, his thoughts drifting back to the gym. Coach Adams's words about respect and teamwork stuck with him. For the first time, he realized that this was more than just basketball. It was a chance to grow, to learn, and to prove to himself that he belonged. As he lay in bed later that night, his muscles still sore, Michael stared at the ceiling and smiled. This was just the beginning. The days that followed were filled with drills, sweat, and exhaustion. Coach Adams had a way of pushing the team to their limits. Every practice began with grueling conditioning sprints, push-ups, and suicides that made Michael's legs ache. At first, it felt impossible to keep up. His lungs burned, his muscles screamed, and there were moments when he wondered if he had made a mistake joining the team. But Michael didn't quit. Each day, as the team ran laps or practice plays, Coach Adams' voice would echo through the gym. "Hustle! You don't get better by standing still." Michael pushed himself harder with every whistle, refusing to be the one who lagged behind. Slowly, he started to notice the change. His legs felt stronger, his breathing steadier. His shots, which had been rusty during the first practice, began to swish cleanly through the hoop. Still, Michael wasn't the best on the team. Ryan played with confidence and precision, clearly the strongest player, while others seemed more comfortable calling out plays and driving to the basket. Michael watched them closely, determined to learn. One afternoon, after an especially tough scrimmage, Michael stayed behind to practice his free throws. Most of the team had already packed up and left, the sound of bouncing basketballs fading away. "Reynolds!" Coach Adams' voice called from across the gym. Michael turned, startled, as Coach approached with a water bottle in hand. The gym was quiet now, the sunlight streaming in through the high windows and casting long shadows across the polished floor. "You're still here," Coach said, stopping next to him. Michael shrugged, dribbling the ball absent-mindedly. "I missed a couple of free throws during the scrimmage. I need to get better." Coach Adams nodded approvingly, crossing his arms over his chest. "That's good. You recognize where you need to improve, and you're putting in the work. That's how you grow." Michael looked down at the ball in his hands, hesitating for a moment. "It feels like everyone else is so much better than me." Coach studied him for a long moment before speaking. "You know what separates good players from great ones, Reynolds?" Michael shook his head. "It's not talent," Coach said. "It's persistence. The willingness to keep showing up, keep practicing, and keep pushing through, even when it's hard. You've got that. I've seen it in you." Michael blinked in surprise. "You think so?" Coach Adams smiled faintly. "I know so. Look, you're not going to be perfect overnight, but if you keep putting in the work, you'll get there." Michael felt something shift inside him. Coach Adams believed in him, really believed in him. It was the kind of encouragement Michael hadn't known he needed until he heard it. "Thanks, Coach," Michael said softly. Coach clapped a hand on his shoulder. "Keep shooting. I'll see you tomorrow." As Coach Adams walked away, Michael turned back to the hoop. He lined up his shot, focusing on the rhythm of his breathing and the feel of the ball in his hands. He released it, and the ball sailed cleanly through the net. That evening, Michael sat at the kitchen table, finishing his homework while Carolyn washed dishes. "How's basketball going?" she asked over the sound of running water. Michael smiled faintly, resting his pencil on the notebook. "Tough, but good. Coach Adams says I just have to keep pushing through." Carolyn turned to face him, drying her hands on a dish towel. "He's right. You're learning something important, Michael." "What's that?" "That growth comes from struggle. It's easy to give up when things get hard, but it takes real strength to keep going. Michael nodded thoughtfully, her words echoing what Coach Adams had said earlier. He felt proud of himself for sticking with it, even when it was hard. "Mom?" he asked suddenly. "Hmm? Why do you think Coach believes in me?" Carolyn smiled as she sat down across from him. "Because he sees what I see, a young man who works hard, doesn't quit, and gives his best effort. That's all anyone can ask for." Michael looked down at his notebook, her words sinking in. Maybe she was right. Maybe the hard work was starting to pay off, even if he couldn't see all the results yet. The next day, Michael arrived early to practice. He wanted extra time to shoot free throws before the rest of the team arrived. He grabbed a ball and started his routine, focusing on his form. 1 shot, swish. 2 shots, swish. 3 shots, rim. Michael jogged forward, grabbed the ball, and reset. "Hey, new guy, you're early," a voice called. Michael turned to see Ryan walking into the gym, his duffel bag slung over his shoulder. "Yeah," Michael said, wiping sweat from his forehead. "I wanted to get some extra practice in." Ryan nodded, dropping his bag and grabbing a ball of his own. "That's smart. Coach likes players who put in the work." Michael smiled faintly. "Yeah, that's what he said yesterday." Ryan raised an eyebrow. "He talked to you?" "After practice. He told me persistence matters more than talent." Ryan grinned as he dribbled the ball. "Sounds like Coach. He says that all the time, but he only tells it to players he sees something in." Michael felt his chest swell with pride. "Really?" "Yeah," Ryan said, taking a shot. The ball bounced off the rim, and he shrugged. "You're doing good, Reynolds. You just need to get out of your own head." Michael frowned. "What do you mean?" "You're always overthinking," Ryan said matter-of-factly. "Just play. Trust yourself. The rest will come." Michael thought about what Ryan said as he picked up his ball. Maybe he was right. As practice began, Michael found himself more relaxed. During scrimmages, he stopped worrying about every little mistake. Instead, he focused on moving the ball, finding open teammates, and trusting his instincts. At one point, Ryan passed him the ball just outside the three-point line. Michael hesitated for only a second before squaring up and taking the shot. The ball sailed through the air and swished cleanly through the net. "Nice shot," Ryan called, grinning. Michael grinned back, feeling the confidence build inside him. By the time practice ended, Michael was exhausted but proud. Coach Adams called the team together and nodded as he looked them over. "Good work today. I'm seeing improvement from all of you. Keep it up," he said. Then, his eyes found Michael. "Nice shot from the three-point line, Reynolds." Michael's cheeks flushed, but he smiled. "Thanks, Coach." As the team packed up, Ryan nudged him with his elbow. "See? You've got it in you. Just keep showing up." Michael nodded, feeling lighter than he had in weeks. The encouragement from Coach Adams, Ryan, and even his mother had begun to change something inside him. He was starting to believe in himself again. That evening, as Michael walked home, the sunset painted the sky in streaks of orange and purple. He could hear kids playing in their yards and the distant hum of crickets beginning to chirp. For the first time since moving here, the neighborhood felt like it was becoming his. When he reached his house, Carolyn was on the porch, sipping tea. She smiled as he climbed the steps. How was practice? Michael dropped his bag with a satisfied sigh. "It was good. Coach said I'm improving." Carolyn smiled warmly. "That's my boy." Michael sat down beside her, feeling the evening breeze against his face. "I think I'm starting to get it, Mom. Basketball's not just about playing. It's about pushing yourself to be better, even when it's hard." Carolyn nodded. "You're learning something important, Michael. You can carry that lesson with you everywhere you go." Michael leaned back in the chair, a quiet pride settling in his chest. He still had a long way to go, but for the first time in a long time, he felt like he was exactly where he was meant to be. The days slipped into a steady rhythm. Mornings were spent helping Carolyn around the house or finishing summer reading assignments, and afternoons belonged to basketball. Each practice brought new challenges, conditioning drills, plays to memorize, and the endless repetition of fundamentals. Michael had never worked so hard before, but something about it felt good. It was as though each drop of sweat washed away a little more of his uncertainty, replacing it with quiet confidence. The more Michael pushed himself, the more he noticed things shifting around him. Ryan had stopped calling him "new guy" and instead started referring to him by his name. Jenny often joked about how Michael was now Mr. Reliable during games, passing the ball at just the right moment or setting up a teammate for an open shot. Even Coach Adams gave him more nods of approval during practice, small gestures that meant more to Michael than he could express. It was late afternoon when Coach Adams gathered the team together at center court. His whistle echoed in the otherwise quiet gym, snapping everyone to attention. "Listen up," Coach said, pacing in front of the players. "Tomorrow we're hosting a scrimmage against Greenview's Community League team. They've got size, speed, and a couple of sharpshooters. I want you all ready for a fight. This is a test not just of skill, but of teamwork. Play together or you'll fall apart. Got it?" "Yes, Coach," the team replied. Michael swallowed hard, feeling a mix of excitement and nerves. A real scrimmage. This would be his first chance to play against another team since moving here. The thought sent a flutter through his chest. That evening, at dinner, Michael couldn't stop thinking about the scrimmage. Carolyn noticed the faraway look in his eyes as he pushed peas around his plate. "You're quiet tonight," she said gently. "Thinking about the game?" Michael nodded. "Yeah. Coach says the other team is really good. What if I mess up?" Carolyn set her fork down and looked at him. "Michael, do you know why I'm proud of you?" Michael shrugged. "Because I made the team?" "No," Carolyn said with a small smile. "I'm proud of you because you keep showing up. You're putting yourself out there, even when it's hard. That's what matters most. Tomorrow, you don't need to be perfect. You just need to play your best and trust your team." Michael exhaled slowly, letting her words settle. "Trust my team," he repeated. Carolyn nodded. "Exactly." The next day, the gym buzzed with energy as players warmed up on the court. Parents and siblings gathered in the bleachers, their voices a hum of chatter and excitement. The Greenview team was already shooting on the far end of the gym, their tall, athletic players moving with practiced ease. Michael felt his nerves creep in as he watched them make shot after shot. "Relax," Jenny said, coming up beside him. "You look like you're about to pass out." Michael managed a weak grin. "I'm fine. Just trying not to mess up." Jenny rolled her eyes. "You've been killing it in practice. Stop doubting yourself. We've got this." Ryan jogged over, bouncing a ball as he came to a stop. "All right, team huddle." The group formed a tight circle, and Ryan lowered his voice so only they could hear. "Greenview's big, but they're not invincible. We play smart, pass the ball, and don't try to do everything ourselves. Got it?" Michael nodded, remembering Carolyn's words, "Trust your team." Coach Adams blew his whistle. "Let's go, boys and girls. Line up." The scrimmage started fast. Greenview won the tip-off, and their point guard, a tall kid with quick feet, immediately drove to the basket and scored an easy layup. Michael felt the energy shift, the Greenview players grinning with confidence. "Shake it off!" Ryan called as he inbounded the ball. "Let's move!" Michael ran up the court, finding his position as Ryan dribbled the ball past half-court. He passed it to Jenny, who faked a shot before sending it to Michael just beyond the free-throw line. Michael caught the ball, his heart racing. A Greenview player lunged toward him, hands up. For a split second, Michael thought about shooting, but then he remembered Ryan's words, "Play smart." Instead, Michael pivoted and passed the ball back to Ryan, who was open at the three-point line. Ryan lined up the shot and sank it cleanly through the net. "Yes!" Jenny shouted, clapping her hands as they ran back on defense. "Nice pass, Reynolds," Ryan called over his shoulder. Michael felt a surge of pride. Trust your team. The first half of the game was intense. Greenview played aggressively, pushing the pace and forcing turnovers whenever they could. Michael struggled to keep up with his defender, a lanky kid with fast reflexes who seemed to anticipate his every move. Twice, the ball slipped from Michael's hands, leading to easy points for Greenview. By halftime, the score was close. Greenview led by just 3 points. The team gathered on the bench, breathing hard and wiping sweat from their faces. Coach Adams knelt in front of them, his expression calm but serious. "You're playing hard, and that's good, but you're trying to do too much alone. Basketball is a team game. Trust each other. Move the ball. Find the open man." Michael looked down at his shoes, feeling the sting of his earlier mistakes. He could hear Ryan and Jenny murmuring encouragement to their teammates, their voices steady and confident. Coach Adams's gaze landed on Michael. "Reynolds, you're playing tight. Relax and trust yourself. I don't need you to be perfect. I just need you to play your game." Michael nodded, his jaw tightening. "Yes, coach." The second half was different. Michael felt himself settling into the rhythm of the game. Instead of trying to force plays, he focused on moving the ball and setting up his teammates. When his defender closed in on him, Michael passed to Jenny, who sank a jumper. When Ryan was double-teamed, Michael cut to the basket and received a clean pass, laying it in for 2 points. "Nice cut, Reynolds," Ryan called, grinning. The game was tied with less than a minute left. Greenview had the ball, and their point guard drove hard to the basket. Michael sprinted back on defense, stepping into position just as the kid leaped for the layup. Michael raised his arms, his heart pounding, and managed to tip the ball just enough to send it bouncing off the rim. "Rebound!" Ryan shouted. Jenny grabbed the ball and passed it up the court. Ryan caught it, dribbled once, and launched a three-pointer just as the buzzer sounded. The ball soared through the air, the entire gym holding its breath. It hit the rim, bounced once, then dropped through the net. The gym erupted with cheers. Michael grinned as his teammates swarmed Ryan, clapping him on the back. "Way to go!" Jenny shouted, beaming. Ryan turned to Michael and held out his hand. "Nice block, Reynolds. We wouldn't have had that shot without you." Michael grinned as he shook Ryan's hand. For the first time, he felt like he was truly part of the team. After the scrimmage, as the players packed up, Coach Adams walked over to Michael and placed a hand on his shoulder. "You played smart today," Coach said. "That's what I like to see." "Thanks, Coach," Michael replied, his chest swelling with pride. Coach nodded, his expression serious but kind. "Remember this feeling, Reynolds. Trust your teammates, trust yourself, and good things will happen." Michael smiled, the lesson settling deep inside him. That night, as Michael sat with Carolyn on the porch, he told her about the scrimmage, how Ryan had hit the winning shot, and how the team had worked together. "You're finding your place, Michael," Carolyn said, her voice soft. "I hope you're proud of yourself." Michael nodded, looking up at the darkening sky. "I am." For the first time since they had moved, he believed it. The day after the scrimmage, the team returned to practice with a new kind of energy. Winning the game against Greenview had given everyone a boost of confidence. The gym echoed with laughter, sneakers squeaking against the hardwood, and the rhythmic thump of bouncing basketballs. Michael arrived early, as usual, his sneakers slung over his shoulder. He liked coming in before the others, getting a few quiet moments on the court, shooting free throws to clear his head. "Hey, Reynolds!" Ryan's voice broke through the silence. Michael turned to see Ryan and a couple of other teammates walking in. "Still working on those free throws?" Michael grinned, holding up the ball. "Gotta stay sharp." Ryan nodded approvingly. "That's what I like to hear." As more players trickled in, Michael felt something different in the way they treated him. No longer the new guy, he was starting to feel like part of the team. Kids called out to him, asking him to pass the ball during warm-ups, joking with him about his height. "Reynolds, you need to grow a couple inches to play center," and giving him high fives after a good shot. Coach Adams arrived with his clipboard in hand and blew his whistle, signaling the start of practice. "Hustle up, team! Warm-ups now, no dragging your feet." The team jogged laps, the sound of their collective footsteps steady and strong. Michael felt the rhythm of the group, the camaraderie that came with working toward a shared goal. But as practice wore on, Michael noticed something else. Tension was starting to creep in. The first sign came during a passing drill. Ryan, as always, ran the point, calling out plays and directing traffic. When he passed the ball to a younger teammate named Danny, the ball slipped through Danny's hands and bounced out of bounds. "Come on, Danny!" Ryan snapped, throwing up his hands. "Catch the ball!" Danny's face flushed, and he mumbled a quick, "Sorry." "Sorry doesn't fix bad passes," Ryan muttered, jogging back into position. Michael frowned. Ryan had always been a little intense, but his frustration seemed to linger longer today. During scrimmages, it got worse. If someone missed a shot or fumbled a play, Ryan's voice cut through the gym like a knife. "What are you doing, man? Pay attention! Quit messing around!" Michael watched as the team's energy shifted. The easy rhythm they'd had during the Greenview game started to break apart. Kids moved slower, second-guessing their decisions. Even Michael found himself hesitating with the ball, worried that Ryan's criticism would fall on him next. During a water break, Michael grabbed a bottle and sat near Jenny on the bleachers. She had her head tilted back, staring at the ceiling with a frustrated sigh. "What's up with Ryan today?" Michael asked quietly, twisting the cap off his bottle. Jenny glanced at him and shook her head. "He's just intense. He hates losing, so he pushes everyone hard. It's not new, but today feels worse." Michael nodded, glancing across the gym. Ryan stood near Coach Adams, gesturing as he talked. His shoulders were stiff, his voice low but clearly urgent. "Coach will say something," Jenny added, reading Michael's expression. "He always does." But when practice resumed, the tension only got worse. During a half-court scrimmage, Michael caught a pass from Danny and drove to the basket. Ryan cut across the key at the same time, yelling, "Pass it back!" Michael hesitated for just a second, trying to decide whether to shoot or pass. That second was too long. A defender stole the ball, and Ryan's voice exploded. "What was that, Reynolds? You had me wide open!" Michael's face flushed as he jogged back on defense. "I thought I could take the shot." "Well, you thought wrong," Ryan snapped. Coach Adams blew his whistle sharply. "Hold it!" The players stopped, gathering around Coach at center court. Michael kept his eyes on the floor, his pulse pounding in his ears. "Ryan," Coach said, his voice calm but firm, "you're a leader on this team, but leaders don't tear their teammates down. You play together, or you don't play at all." Ryan opened his mouth to argue, but Coach held up a hand. "The game isn't won with one player. It's won when every player works as a team. Is that clear?" "Yes, Coach," Ryan muttered, his jaw tight. Coach turned to the rest of the team. "And the rest of you, you don't hesitate. Trust yourselves, trust your teammates, and play your game. Now let's finish strong." Practice ended on a quieter note. Players packed up their bags, tired and tense. Michael grabbed his water bottle and slung his duffel bag over his shoulder, trying to shake off the sting of Ryan's words. He had worked so hard to fit in here, and now it felt like one mistake had wiped all that away. "Hey, Reynolds." Michael turned to see Ryan standing nearby, holding a basketball under his arm. "Sorry I yelled," Ryan said, his voice softer than before. "I get caught up sometimes." Michael nodded, surprised. "It's okay. I just didn't know you were open." Ryan sighed, running a hand through his hair. "Coach is right, though. I shouldn't have snapped. I hate losing. I've been playing here for years, and I want us to be the best." Michael looked at him for a moment, then nodded. "I get it. I just don't want to mess up." "You're not messing up," Ryan replied, his tone sincerer now. "You're doing good, Reynolds. I shouldn't have made you feel like you weren't." Michael felt a small smile tug at his lips. "Thanks." Ryan grinned faintly and held out the ball. "Want to shoot around for a bit? I'll show you some of my moves." Michael blinked, surprised, but nodded. Yeah, let's do it. The two of them stayed on the court for another half hour, taking turns shooting and running quick drills. Ryan showed Michael how to create space for his shot and how to fake a pass to throw off a defender. You've got good instincts, Ryan said, after Michael sank a clean jumper. You just need to trust them. Michael nodded, his confidence returning. He could feel the difference already, the way the ball felt in his hands, the way his feet moved without hesitation. See? Ryan added. You're better than you think, Reynolds. Michael grinned. Thanks, Ryan. When Michael got home, Carolyn was sitting at the kitchen table, a book in her hands. She looked up as he set down his duffel bag. How was practice? Michael hesitated for a second, then smiled. It was hard, but good. Ryan showed me some new moves after. Carolyn raised an eyebrow, clearly pleased. It sounds like you two are building a good bond. Michael nodded. Yeah, I think so. Carolyn smiled softly. That's how teams work, Michael. It's not just about playing together, it's about learning from each other too. Michael thought about Ryan's apology, about how they'd stayed to shoot around after practice. He was starting to understand that being part of a team meant growing together, even when it wasn't easy. As he climbed into bed that night, Michael felt a new sense of balance. The tension from earlier practice had faded, replaced by something stronger: trust. He thought about Coach Adams's words. Leaders don't tear their teammates down, they build them up. Maybe one day, Michael thought, as he drifted off to sleep, he could be a leader too. The day of the first game arrived sooner than Michael expected. As he sat at the edge of his bed lacing up his sneakers, he could feel the hum of nerves vibrating through his body. The past few weeks had been a whirlwind of drills, scrimmages, and lessons. Each practice pushed him further, not just physically, but mentally. Michael had learned that basketball was more than making shots or stealing the ball. It was about trust, perseverance, and resilience. Ready for the big game? Carolyn asked, leaning against his doorway with her arms crossed. Michael looked up, managing a smile. I think so. Carolyn walked over and rested a hand on his shoulder. Michael, you've worked so hard for this. Just go out there and give it everything you've got. No matter what happens, I'll be cheering for you. Michael nodded, the weight in his chest lightening just a little. Carolyn always knew what to say. Thanks, Mom. Now hurry up, she said, giving his shoulder a small squeeze. We don't want you being late. The community gym buzzed with energy. Kids in jerseys ran up and down the court, warming up. Parents filled the bleachers, and the hum of chatter mixed with the sound of bouncing basketballs. Michael's team huddled near the bench, tying their shoes and stretching. All right, listen up, Ryan called, his voice carrying above the noise. This is our first real game of the season. We've put in the work, so let's play like we know how. Pass, communicate, and trust each other. Got it? The team shouted their agreement. Coach Adams approached the group, his presence commanding immediate attention. You've all worked hard to get here, and now it's time to show what you've learned. Remember what I've told you? Basketball is a team sport. Win or lose, we do it together. Play smart, play tough, and support one another. Let's go. The team raised their hands into the center of the huddle, their voices blending into a single, unified chant. One team. The game started fast. The other team, Willow Grove, played with speed and precision, their point guard weaving effortlessly through defenders to score an easy layup in the first minute. Michael's team looked rattled at first, struggling to match Willow Grove's intensity. Slow it down, Ryan called as he dribbled up the court. Play our game! Michael sprinted to his spot near the free throw line, ready to cut to the basket. Ryan passed him the ball, and Michael pivoted to look for an opening. A defender closed in quickly, hands up and feet shifting. For a second, Michael's mind froze, but then he remembered Ryan's words from practice, trust your instincts. Michael faked a shot, causing the defender to jump. With one quick step, he cut past him and laid the ball gently off the backboard. Yes, Jenny shouted from the sideline. Michael grinned as he jogged back on defense, his confidence growing. The game was far from easy, but Michael's team settled into a rhythm. Ryan controlled the pace, Jenny made sharp cuts to the basket, and Danny's defensive hustle kept Willow Grove's offense from running away with the score. By halftime, the scoreboard read, Willow Grove 28, Pinewood 26. The team gathered on the bench, breathing hard and wiping sweat from their faces. Coach Adams knelt in front of them, clipboard in hand. "You're doing good out there," he said, his voice steady and encouraging. "We're only down by 2. Play smart, keep moving the ball, and don't let up on defense." Ryan leaned forward, looking at each teammate. "We've got this. Everyone's playing great. Let's keep it up." Michael nodded along with the others, a determined energy filling the group. He knew they could win this. The second half was a battle. Both teams fought for every possession, every rebound, every loose ball. Ryan hit 2 3-pointers to keep Pinewood close, while Jenny made a tough layup after Michael set a perfect screen. With 2 minutes left in the game, the score was tied 42-42. The gym felt electric, every cheer and shout echoing off the walls. Michael's heart pounded in his chest as he watched the clock tick down. Willow Grove called a timeout to set up their next play. Coach Adams huddled the team together, his voice low and calm. "Defense wins games," he said. "Make them work for every shot. Michael, you're on their point guard. Stay with him. Don't let him get an easy look." Michael's stomach tightened, but he nodded. "Got it, coach. Good. Let's finish strong." The whistle blew, and the game resumed. Willow Grove's point guard dribbled up the court, his movements quick and calculated. Michael stayed with him, mirroring his steps and keeping his hands up. "Move your feet, Reynolds," Ryan shouted from the key. The point guard faked left, then cut right. Michael followed him, his mind laser-focused on the ball. As the player drove toward the basket, Michael saw his chance. He reached in at just the right moment, knocking the ball loose. The ball bounced free, and Jenny scooped it up. "Go!" she yelled. Ryan sprinted down the court, calling for the ball. Jenny passed it to him, and Ryan took 2 quick steps before pulling up at the 3-point line. He launched the ball just as the defender closed in, the gym falling into hushed silence. The ball arched high through the air, the moment stretching out like slow motion. It swished through the net. The gym erupted in cheers. With only 10 seconds left, Willow Grove tried to push the ball up the court, but their desperation showed. Michael stuck to his player, keeping him from getting the ball. The final buzzer sounded, and Pinewood had won, 45-42. The team stormed the court, cheering and high-fiving. Michael found himself surrounded by teammates, Ryan clapping him on the back and shouting, "That steal was huge, Reynolds." Jenny grinned as she grabbed Michael's arm. "You saved us with that defense." Michael smiled, his face flushed with pride. The nervousness he had felt earlier was gone, replaced by something much stronger belonging. After the game, as the crowd thinned out, Michael spotted Carolyn waiting near the gym entrance. Her smile was wide as she waved him over. "You played so well, Michael," she said, pulling him into a hug. "I'm so proud of you." Michael grinned, his duffel bag slung over his shoulder. "Thanks, Mom, we worked hard for this one." "I could see that," Carolyn replied. "It's not just about the score, though. You looked like you were having fun out there." Michael nodded, feeling the truth in her words. For the first time since moving to this neighborhood, he felt completely at ease, like he was exactly where he was supposed to be. "Yeah," he said softly, "I was." As they stepped outside into the cool evening air, Michael looked up at the stars beginning to peek through the sky. Winning the game felt great, but what mattered more was how far he had come. He had learned to trust himself, trust his team, and push through the challenges that once felt insurmountable. Michael knew there would be more games, more mistakes, and more lessons to learn. But for now, as he walked beside his mother, He let himself enjoy the moment, one built on hard work, trust, and the belief that he truly belonged. The morning after the big game, Michael felt lighter than he had in weeks. He woke up to sunlight streaming through his window and the faint sounds of life outside, birds chirping, a dog barking, kids' voices drifting through the air. He lay there for a moment, staring at the ceiling with a small smile. They had won. Pinewood's team had fought hard, worked together, and come out on top. But it wasn't just the win that made him feel different. It was the way the team had grown into a family, the way Ryan, Jenny, and even Coach Adams had believed in him. Michael stretched and climbed out of bed, his legs still sore from the previous day's game. Carolyn was already up, sitting at the kitchen table with her coffee and the local newspaper open in front of her. "Morning, champ," she said with a teasing smile as Michael walked in. "Morning, Mom," Michael replied, pouring himself a glass of orange juice. Carolyn held up the newspaper. "Your game made the community sports section. Pinewood League wins nail-biter against Willow Grove. That's quite a headline." Michael grinned, sitting across from her. "Really?" "Really," Carolyn replied, setting the paper down. "It says Ryan hit the winning shot, but it also mentions your steal in the final seconds. You're making a name for yourself, Michael." Michael felt his face flush with pride. He took a sip of his juice, unable to stop himself from smiling. "It wasn't just me. The whole team played well." "That's what a team does," Carolyn said warmly. "Everyone plays their part." That afternoon, Michael grabbed his basketball and headed to the park. The court had become a kind of sanctuary for him, a place where he could clear his mind and enjoy the game. It was quiet when he arrived, the pavement still warm from the sun. He dribbled the ball a few times, savoring the rhythmic thump against the ground, then took a shot. The ball arched cleanly and swished through the net. "Nice shot." The voice startled him. Michael turned to see someone walking toward the court. His stomach dropped slightly when he recognized her, Janet Mitchell, the woman who had confronted him at the pool weeks ago. She looked different today, though. Her posture wasn't as stiff, her face not as harsh. Instead, she looked uncertain, as if she wasn't sure how to approach him. Michael froze, unsure of what to do. He thought about how he had felt that day at the pool, small, humiliated, and invisible. The memory still stung, but something about the way Janet stood there now, with her hands clasped tightly in front of her, made him pause. "Hi, Michael," she said, her voice softer than he had ever heard it. Michael blinked, surprised she even knew his name. Hi." Janet glanced at the ground before meeting his eyes again. "I saw the article in the paper, about the game yesterday." "Oh," Michael said, unsure how to respond. Janet hesitated, shifting her weight as if she were wrestling with what to say next. Finally, she let out a small breath. "I wanted to say, I'm sorry." Michael stared at her, taken aback. "I was wrong," Janet continued, her voice quiet but steady. "When I saw you at the pool that day, I made assumptions that I had no right to make. I let my own biases get in the way, and I'm sorry for the way I treated you." Michael stood there for a moment, his basketball resting under his arm. He thought about how angry and hurt he had felt that day, but he also thought about everything that had happened since the team, the game, Ryan's encouragement, and Coach Adams' lessons about trust and leadership. He took a deep breath. "Thank you," he said simply. Janet nodded, relief flickering across her face. "I know it doesn't erase what happened, but I'm trying to be better. I hope you'll give me the chance." Michael looked at her for a moment, then nodded. "Okay?" Janet offered a small smile. "You're a talented player. I'll have to come watch one of your games sometime." Michael's lips curled into a faint smile. "Thanks." Janet turned and began to walk away, leaving Michael alone on the court again. He watched her go, a strange mix of emotions swirling inside him. Part of him had expected to feel anger, to hold on to the resentment from that day, but instead, all he felt was relief. like a weight he hadn't realized he was carrying had been lifted. People can change, Michael thought, as he dribbled the ball again. Maybe Carolyn was right. Growth wasn't just about pushing through your own struggles. It was also about being able to forgive, to let go of the past, and to recognize when others were trying to do better. The next day at practice, Michael arrived early, as always. He was surprised to see Ryan already on the court, shooting around by himself. "You're here early," Michael called as he grabbed a ball. Ryan grinned, wiping sweat from his forehead. "Figured I'd get some extra practice in. Coach says there's always room to improve, right?" Michael smiled and took his own shot, the ball swishing through the net. "That's what he says." Ryan jogged over and held out his fist, and Michael bumped it without hesitation. "You've come a long way, Reynolds," Ryan said. "You've earned your spot on this team." Michael felt pride swell in his chest. "Thanks, Ryan. That means a lot." As the rest of the team trickled in and practice started, Michael found himself fully in the rhythm of the game. He no longer hesitated when the ball came to him. He moved confidently, called out plays, and trusted his teammates just as they trusted him. During a scrimmage, Coach Adams watched Michael carefully, a faint smile playing at the corners of his mouth. When practice ended, he pulled Michael aside. "You've been doing good work, Reynolds," Coach said. "You're not just playing better, you're leading out there." Michael blinked, surprised. "Me? A leader?" Coach nodded. "Leadership isn't about being the loudest voice in the room. It's about setting an example, working hard, staying calm under pressure, and building up the people around you. You've got that in you." Michael smiled, Coach's words sinking in. "Thanks, Coach." "Keep it up," Coach said, patting him on the shoulder. That evening, Michael sat with Carolyn on the porch as the sun set over Pinewood Lane. The neighborhood was quiet, the sky streaked with orange and purple, and the soft hum of crickets filled the air. "You seem happy," Carolyn said, sipping her tea. Michael leaned back in his chair, smiling faintly. "I am. I think I finally get it, Mom." "Get what?" Michael thought for a moment, searching for the right words. "That belonging isn't about proving yourself to other people. It's about showing up, working hard, and trusting the people who care about you." Carolyn smiled, her eyes full of pride. "That's a lesson most people take years to learn, Michael. I'm proud of you." Michael looked out over the street, where kids rode bikes and neighbors waved to each other. It didn't feel unfamiliar anymore. Pinewood Lane had become his home, not because it was perfect, but because he had found his place in it. As the evening breeze brushed against his face, Michael felt a quiet sense of peace. He had learned to push through challenges, to trust his teammates, and to rise above the assumptions of others. And along the way, he had discovered that kindness and forgiveness were just as important as perseverance. No matter what came next, Michael knew he belonged on the team, in the neighborhood, and in this new chapter of his life. This story reminds us that belonging is about showing up, trusting others, and persevering through life's challenges. It also teaches us that kindness and understanding can change lives in ways we never expect. If you enjoyed this story, please like the video, share it with others, and subscribe to the channel. Don't forget to click the notification bell so you never miss an inspiring story like this one. Thank you for watching, and remember, no matter where life takes you, there is always a place where you can belong.